Fluorescent lights hummed above me, a stark contrast to the dimness clinging to the corners of the hospital room. I opened my eyes slowly, feigning a return to consciousness, and saw Leora's face contorted in something between disbelief and was it terror. "You look surprised," I croaked, my voice raspy from disuse. Her hand flew to her mouth, a small gasp escaping her lips. "Mom, oh my God, you're awake." Her voice was thin, brittle. I blinked, trying to project confusion. What happened?" "You were in an accident," she said, rushing to my bedside. "The brakes, they failed." Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. "The doctors, they didn't think," she trailed off, her voice choked with emotion that seemed performative. I reached out a trembling hand, and she grasped it, her grip surprisingly tight. "Julian is on his way," she added quickly. "He was so worried." "Julian," I repeated, the name feeling strange on my tongue. "My son-in-law, the man Leora had brought into our lives, so charming, so attentive. Had he been in on this too?" The thought chilled me. I squeezed her hand weakly. "Water." She poured me a glass from the pitcher on the nightstand, her hand shaking slightly as she held it to my lips. I sipped slowly, watching her over the rim of the glass. Her eyes were fixed on me, a desperate plea in their depths. A plea for what? Forgiveness, or for me to slip back into unconsciousness? "The doctors said it was a miracle you survived," she whispered. "A miracle?" I echoed, my voice flat. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the word hang in the air. When I opened them again, Leora had stepped back, a slight frown creasing her brow. "I should call Julian," she murmured, pulling her phone from her pocket. "Let him know the good news." "Yes," I whispered, watching her as she moved towards the door. "Good news." She stepped into the hallway, closing the door softly behind her. I waited, listening intently, until I heard her voice, low and urgent, on the other end of the line. "Julian, she's awake," Leora hissed, her voice barely a whisper. The relief I expected wasn't there. Instead, there was a sharp edge of panic. "I can't believe it. I thought she was gone." A pause. Then, her voice dropping even lower. "This changes everything. The lawyer, the paperwork, it's all complicated now." My heart pounded in my chest. "Complicated how?" I strained to hear Julian's response. I know," Leora continued, her voice rising in frustration. "But what was I supposed to do, wait around forever? She was practically a vegetable. And the money we need, the money, Julian. We talked about this. The down payment, the wedding, everything, it was all riding on this." My breath hitched. The money, my unexpected inheritance from Aunt Millie. It had been a windfall, a life changer, and Leora knew it. She'd been so excited, so helpful ever since the news broke. Too helpful. "I don't know what to do now," Leora's voice cracked. "She's going to want answers. About the breaks, about everything." There was another pause. Then Julian's voice, muffled but distinct, came through the thin hospital door. "Calm down, Leora. We'll figure something out. Just play it cool. We need to be smart about this." "Smart?" Leora's voice was laced with hysteria. "How much smarter can we be? She's alive. Julian, alive. Our planet's ruined." I lay back against the pillows, my mind racing. My plan, their plan, the breaks. It wasn't an accident. Leora had tried to kill me. For money. For my inheritance. I closed my eyes, letting the enormity of her betrayal wash over me. But beneath the shock, a quiet resolve began to take root. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I would let her continue to believe I was oblivious. Let her and Julian weave their web of lies. I would watch. I would listen. And I would wait for the perfect moment to strike back. I had a feeling this inheritance was going to be far more trouble than it was worth for Lara, and I intended to make sure of it. Rain lashed against the hospital window, mirroring the storm inside me. My body ached, a dull throb radiating from the cast encasing my leg. "You were lucky, Mrs. Davies," the doctor had said, his voice grave. "The brakes, well, they weren't functioning as they should have been." He hadn't said it outright, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Someone had wanted me dead, and I knew who. I closed my eyes, the image of Lara's face, tight with barely concealed annoyance, flashing behind my eyelids. Just yesterday, she'd been here, fluttering around my bedside, feigning concern. "Oh, Mother," she cried, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. How could this happen? Her performance had been Oscar-worthy. If only I hadn't overheard her whispered phone call just moments before. "He's asking about the will," she'd hissed into the receiver. "Presumably Julian," I told him. "Just be patient. It'll all be ours soon. The inheritance." That wretched letter. It had arrived just a week ago, an unexpected windfall from a distant relative I barely remembered. Enough to secure my future, to ensure my comfort in my old age, and enough, apparently, to make me a target. Imagine, Lara had gushed when I'd shared the news, her eyes gleaming with an unnatural brightness. A little early inheritance. Mother, how fortunate. Fortunate for whom? I'd thought at the time, a flicker of unease already taking root. Now, lying here, the chilling truth was undeniable. My hand instinctively went to the small, antique locket nestled beneath my hospital gown. Inside, a faded photograph of my late husband smiled back at me. He'd always trusted Lara, championed her relationship with our son. He'd been so wrong. A wave of grief washed over me, heavier than the pain in my leg. I'd lost my husband, and now, it seemed, I'd lost my daughter-in-law too, to the insatiable monster of greed. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of pain medication, lukewarm hospital food, and the relentless drumming of rain against the window pane. Lara's visits became less frequent, her performance increasingly perfunctory. "Feeling any better, Mother?" she'd ask, her voice devoid of genuine warmth. "Julian sends his love." I'd murmur a response, my eyes closed, feigning sleep. I couldn't bear to look at her, to see the avarice masked by her carefully constructed facade of concern. One afternoon, she arrived with a bouquet of lilies, their cloying scent filling the sterile room. "These are your favorites, aren't they?" she chirped, placing them on the bedside table. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing slow and even. "The doctor says you're making good progress," she continued. "Soon you'll be back home, where you belong, where I belong." Her words dripped with false sweetness, a bitter irony I couldn't ignore. She fussed around the room for a while, straightening the already perfectly aligned magazines on the table, adjusting the blinds. Then I heard the telltale click of her phone unlocking. "Julian," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. She's still the same, barely conscious. The doctor says it's touch and go. There was a pause, filled with the static hiss of the phone line. I know, she continued, her voice laced with frustration. It's taking longer than we anticipated, but it's only a matter of time. Just be patient. It'll all be ours soon. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She was so confident, so certain of her victory. She had no idea I was listening, absorbing every damning word. A nurse bustled into the room, interrupting Leora mid-sentence. Mrs. Davies, she chirped, her voice bright and cheerful. Time for your medication. Leora quickly ended the call, her face flushed. I'll be back tomorrow, Mother, she said, her voice strained. Get some rest. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, her lips cold and dry. As she left the room, I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had no idea what was coming. She thought she was so close to inheriting everything, and in a way she was right. But she wouldn't like the inheritance she received. It wouldn't be the one she was expecting. The real inheritance wouldn't be measured in dollars and cents. It would be something far more valuable and far more devastating. The inheritance of truth. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. A week had passed since the accident. A week since the world tilted on its axis and showed me the dark underbelly of my own family. Leora walked into my room, a plate of cinnamon rolls balanced precariously in one hand. Thought you'd like a treat, she said, her voice overly sweet. She set them down on the bedside table, a little too close to the water jug, I thought. How are you feeling, Martha? She asked. Her eyes, I noticed, darting around the room, not quite meeting mine. A little sore, I admitted, my voice raspy, but getting better. I watched her carefully. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Julian sends his love, she added, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. He's been so worried. I simply nodded, taking a slow, deliberate sip of water. He wanted to come see you, but he had a meeting he couldn't reschedule, Leora explained, a little too quickly. I murmured something noncommittal. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. The doctors say you're lucky to be alive, Leora finally said, breaking the silence. They said the breaks. She trailed off, her voice catching in her throat. It's just so awful that someone would do something like that. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. The police are still investigating, I replied, keeping my voice even. Leora shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Well, I should be going, she said, making a move towards the door. I'll come back and visit again soon. Wait, I said, my voice just a little stronger than before. There was something I wanted to show you. I reached for the bedside table, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of the lamp. I fumbled for a moment, pretending to search for something. Leora watched me, her eyes narrowed. What is it? She asked. Finally, I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the letter from the solicitor, the one informing me of my inheritance, the one that had arrived just days before the accident. I hadn't told anyone about it, not even Julian. This came for me a few days ago, I said, holding the letter out to Leora. Her eyes widened as she recognized the solicitor's logo. It seems a distant relative has left me a rather substantial sum. I continued, watching her reaction closely. Leora's face paled, then flushed crimson. She took the letter from me, her hands trembling slightly. She unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the contents. I watched as the realization of what she was reading dawned on her. The silence in the room crackled with unspoken words. This is incredible," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're quite wealthy now." I simply nodded, my gaze steady. "It's life-changing," I agreed, my voice calm and even. Leora looked up from the letter, her eyes meeting mine. There was a strange mixture of emotions in her gaze: disbelief, envy, perhaps even a flicker of regret. This changes everything," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "Yes," I said softly, "it does." I let the words hang in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. Leora cleared her throat. I should probably tell Julian," she said, folding the letter and handing it back to me. "Yes," I replied, taking the letter from her. "You do that." She stood there for a moment longer, as if unsure what to do or say next. Then, with another forced smile, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The cinnamon rolls sat untouched on the bedside table, their sweet aroma suddenly cloying. I closed my eyes, a slow smile spreading across my face. The game, I realized, had just begun, and I had all the time in the world. The police would continue their investigation. Julian would undoubtedly be thrilled for me, and Leora would have to live with the knowledge of what she had done and what she had almost gotten away with. The weight of her secret would hang over her, a constant reminder of her greed, and I, from my hospital bed, would watch it all unfold. The morning light, filtering through the blinds, felt sharp, accusatory. Leora was back, bright and breezy as if nothing had happened. A plate of scones balanced delicately in her hand. "Good morning, Martha. I thought these might cheer you up." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Julian popped out for some errands, but he sends his love." I stared at the scones, picturing the perfectly functional brakes on my car just yesterday. Now, twisted metal and the stench of burnt rubber filled my mind. "They're freshly baked," Leora added, a touch too eagerly, still warm. I managed a weak smile, my throat tight. "Thank you, dear. How thoughtful." My voice felt thin and brittle. I watched her arrange the scones on a bedside table, humming a little tune under her breath. There was a strange detachment to her actions, like she was playing a role. "Anything else I can get you, Martha?" she asked, turning back to me. "No, thank you, Leora." I kept my gaze steady, trying to convey a silent strength I didn't feel. She hovered for a moment longer, then excused herself, saying she needed to check on something in the kitchen. As the door clicked shut, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I closed my eyes, the image of the swerving car flashing behind my eyelids. The sudden, terrifying lurch, the screech of tires, the impact. It had all happened so fast, and yet a slow, creeping dread had taken root in my heart, intertwining itself with the memory of the near-fatal accident. It wasn't an accident, was it? The thought, once a fleeting suspicion, now solidified into a cold, hard certainty. Someone had tampered with my brakes, and the only person who had access to my car was Leora. The pieces began to fall into place. The sudden interest in my will, the insistent questions about my finances, the overly solicitous behavior. It all pointed to a single, horrifying conclusion. Leora wanted me dead. She wanted my inheritance. I opened my eyes, my gaze falling on the plate of scones. A wave of nausea washed over me. Were they poisoned? Was this another attempt? I reached out a trembling hand, picking up one of the scones. It crumbled easily in my fingers, the sweet aroma filling the air. I brought it closer to my nose, inhaling deeply, searching for any hint of something amiss. Nothing, just the warm, buttery scent of freshly baked pastry. I placed it back on the plate, my appetite gone. The realization of Leora's betrayal hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just greed. It was something colder, more calculating, a complete disregard for human life, for my life. I had welcomed her into my family, treated her like a daughter, and this was how she repaid me, by trying to kill me. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, coursing through my veins. But beneath the anger, a deeper emotion took hold, a quiet resolve. I wouldn't let her get away with this. I wouldn't let her win. I needed to be smart. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront her directly. Not yet. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. And then I would expose her for the monster she truly was. I lay back against the pillows, closing my eyes, feigning sleep. I heard the door creak open again. "Martha," Leora whispered. I remained still, my breathing slow and even. "Are you asleep?" she asked, her voice a little louder this time. I didn't move a muscle. I heard her footsteps approach the bed. She stood there for a moment. Then I heard the rustle of fabric as she picked up her phone. "Julian," she whispered into the phone. "It's done. The brakes, they failed. She's in the hospital. They say it's a miracle she survived." A pause. Then her voice barely a breath. "The doctor says she might not make it through the night." My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to remain still. I know," she continued, her voice laced with impatience. "I have to be careful. I can't risk anyone suspecting anything. But once she's gone, the inheritance, it will all be ours. Think of what we can do with the money, Julian. The trips we can take, the house we can buy, it will all be worth it." Her voice dripped with avarice. The trips, the house, it was all about the money. I listened as she continued to spin her web of lies, painting herself as the grieving daughter-in-law, unaware of the chilling truth I now possessed. Every word she spoke was a nail in her coffin. I had my proof, and now I would wait. I would wait for the perfect moment to strike, the perfect moment to reveal her true colors to the world. And when that moment came, I would make sure she paid for what she had done. The inheritance wouldn't be the only thing she lost. She would lose everything. The world spun. One minute I was driving along the coastal highway, enjoying the salty air and the view of the waves crashing against the rocks. The next, the brakes were gone. I muttered, pumping the pedal uselessly. The car lurched forward, picking up speed as the road curved sharply ahead. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. No, I cried out. fighting to control the vehicle as the world became a blur of green and gray. There was a deafening crash, then blackness. I drifted back to consciousness slowly, the world a fuzzy kaleidoscope of sound and sensation. A sharp pain stabbed at my side. My head throbbed. Groaning, I tried to open my eyes, but my lids felt heavy, weighted down. I could hear voices muffled, urgent. "Is she?" a voice whispered, and I recognized it as Leora's. "Is she gone, gone?" A cold dread washed over me. I forced my eyes open a sliver, just enough to see blurred shapes. I could make out Leora, her back to me, pacing anxiously. Julian stood beside her, his face pale and drawn. "I don't know," Julian said, his voice strained. "The paramedics are on their way." He sounded genuinely concerned, but Leora's tone was different. There was a strange, almost eager undercurrent to her words. "Call them again," Leora snapped. "Make sure they understand their urgency. Tell them it's life or death. Life or death." Why did that sound so wrong coming from her? I wanted to sit up, to speak, to ask her what she meant, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I lay there, feigning unconsciousness, my heart pounding in my chest. What was going on? I already told them, Julian replied, his voice tight. "They're doing everything they can." He reached out and touched her arm, but she pulled away sharply. "This is taking too long," Lara muttered, pacing faster now. "I need to make a call." She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I watched through my barely open eyelids as she put the phone to her ear, her voice low and urgent. "It's me," she said into the phone. To think it worked. "The brakes they failed," she crashed. "It looks bad." There was a pause, and I heard a muffled voice on the other end, too quiet for me to make out the words. But Leora's response was clear, chillingly clear. I know," she hissed. But what choice did I have? She wasn't going to know anytime soon. And we need the money. The wedding, the house, everything depends on it. We can't wait any longer. My breath hitched in my throat. The wedding, the house. What was she talking about? "I've handled everything," she continued. "The will, the power of attorney, it's all in place. One seance, she's gone. It's all ours. Julian doesn't suspect a thing. He's devastated, of course, but he'll get over it." She let out a short, sharp laugh that sent shivers down my spine. "We both will. Think of what we can do with all that money. The life we can have, the pieces clicked into place. The sudden inheritance from my late aunt. The whispered conversations I'd overheard between Leora and Julian about their extravagant wedding plans. The seemingly innocent inquiries about my will and finances. The accident. It wasn't an accident at all. Leora had planned it. She had tampered with my brakes, hoping I wouldn't survive. She wanted my money. She wanted it so badly, she was willing to kill me for it. Just make sure everything goes smoothly," Leora said into the phone, her voice hardening. "I don't want any complications. I need this to work." She hung up the phone and turned back towards me, her face carefully composed into an expression of concern. She didn't know I had heard everything. She didn't know that I was awake, listening to her cold, calculated words. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. I closed my eyes again, letting my body go limp, pretending I was still unconscious. I needed time to think, to plan. Leora wanted my money. She thought she had it all figured out. But I had a surprise for her. A very big surprise. She wouldn't get away with this. Not a chance. The paramedics arrived, their sirens wailing, their voices loud and urgent. They lifted me onto a stretcher, their hands gentle but firm. As they carried me towards the ambulance, I caught Leora's eye. She gave me a small, tight smile, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't smile back. I just lay there, silent and still, letting her believe her plan had worked, letting her think she had won. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea what I had in store for her. The game, my dear Leora, had just begun. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nostrils as I drifted in and out of consciousness. Days had blurred since the accident. The world a hazy mix of beeping machines and hushed voices. Then a chilling clarity pierced the fog. It wasn't the impact that had nearly killed me. It was the deliberate tampering with my brakes. And Leora knew. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a cold dread spreading through my veins. I remembered her visit just before the accident, her too sweet smile as she'd checked my car. "Just making sure everything is safe for you, Mom," she'd said, her eyes a little too bright. Now lying here, the pieces clicked together, the inheritance. My sudden, unexpected windfall from a distant relative had changed everything. Leora and Julian had been so attentive, almost suffocatingly so, after the news broke. "We're so happy for you, Martha," Julian had exclaimed, a little too forcefully. I opened my eyes a sliver, feigning unconsciousness. A nurse bustled round the room, adjusting my drip. "She's stable," she murmured to someone just outside my field of vision. Then Leora's voice, sharp and anxious. "But when will she wake up?" The doctor said, "Well, he said it could be a while." There was a pause, then a hushed, urgent tone. "Julian, I can't keep this up. The bills are piling up, and the wedding everything is on hold until," she trailed off, her voice choked with emotion. My heart pounded in my chest. Was she truly this desperate? I know, Julian's voice was low and soothing. "But we're so close. Just a little longer, and it will all be ours. Think of the house, the trips, everything we've dreamed of." He paused, his voice hardening. "Remember what's at stake. We can't afford to back down now." My grip tightened on the sheets. They were talking about my life as if it were a mere inconvenience, an obstacle to their lavish plans. The house they were already planning to move into my home. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow and even. Leora began to pace, her voice rising in frustration. But what if she never wakes up? What if her voice broke, and she began to sob? "I can't lose you, Julian. Not now, not after everything we've planned." Julian's voice was a murmur, too low for me to decipher. Then the sound of a phone ringing. Leora answered, her voice strained. "Hello, yes, this is she. Oh, really? That's wonderful news. Yes, of course. I'll be right there." She hung up, her voice shaking with excitement. "Julian, it's the bank. They've approved the loan. We can finally." She stopped abruptly, realizing I was watching her. Her eyes widened, her face paling. "Mom, you're awake," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I stared at her, my gaze unwavering. She averted her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken accusations. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and drawn. "I was just," she began, but her voice trailed off. I didn't say a word, just continued to look at her, letting the weight of her actions sink in. Julian entered the room, a broad smile on his face. "Martha, you're awake. This is wonderful news." He rushed to my bedside, his hand outstretched. I flinched, pulling away from his touch. His smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I looked from him to Leora, my silence more potent than any words I could have uttered. The next few days were a blur of medical examinations and hushed conversations. I spoke to no one about what I'd overheard, playing the part of the recovering patient, grateful to be alive. Leora and Julian continued their charade, their concern now tinged with a nervous energy I couldn't miss. They hovered around me, anticipating my every need, their forced smiles a stark contrast to the fear in their eyes. I allowed them to fuss, letting them believe their secret was safe. I had a plan that would ensure they received exactly what they deserved. I would let them inherit everything, just as they had planned. But the price they would pay would be far greater than they could imagine. The weight of their guilt, the knowledge of their betrayal, would be a burden they would carry for the rest of their lives. And I would watch from the sidelines, a silent observer of their slow, agonizing downfall. My lawyer had arrived earlier that day, his briefcase bulging with documents. "Everything is in order," he'd assured me, a knowing glint in his eye. "The transfer will be complete within the week." He understood. He understood the game I was playing. Leora brought me a bouquet of lilies, their sickly sweet scent filling the room. "I'm so glad you're recovering, Mom," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I looked at the flowers, then back at her, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Thank you, Leora," I replied, my voice soft. "They're beautiful." But the beauty was a lie, just like everything else. And soon, very soon, the truth would bloom. The truth, like a poisonous flower, would slowly unravel their carefully constructed world, leaving them with nothing but the bitter taste of their own greed. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor filled the sterile room, a steady counterpoint to the unsteady thumping of my own heart. I lay perfectly still, eyes closed, feigning unconsciousness. My body ached, a dull throb radiating from my chest and legs, remnants of the accident. I heard Leora's voice, hushed yet sharp, cutting through the air. "Julian, are you absolutely sure she didn't hear anything?" A pause, filled only by the hum of the machines. Then Julian's voice, equally low, positive. "She's out cold. The doctor said she might not even make it through the night." My breath hitched, but I forced myself to remain still. I had to hear this, had to know how deep their depravity ran. Leora sighed, a sound laden with something that chilled me more than the sterile hospital air. "Good," she breathed, "because this waiting is killing me. I need that money, Julian. We need that money." He murmured something I couldn't quite catch, but her response was crystal clear. "Yes, the cruise, and the down payment on the house, and the everything. It's all within reach now." Her voice took on a harder edge. "Imagine all those stocks, that inheritance, just sitting there, waiting for, well, you know." A silence stretched, broken only by the rustle of fabric. I imagined her pacing, agitation rippling off her in waves. "It's not fair," she continued, her voice rising slightly. "She's lived her life. What does she need all that money for now? Lying in a hospital bed, it's just wasteful." The word hung in the air, thick with resentment. Julian attempted to soothe her. I know, but it'll all be ours soon." He paused. "Are you sure about this holy accident thing? It's just risky." Leora's voice dripped with impatience. "Don't be ridiculous, Julian. It was perfect. Who would suspect anything? A faulty brake line happens." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Besides, it's not like she had much longer anyway. This just things up a bit." My fists clenched beneath the thin hospital blanket. "Sped things up." Those 3 words echoed in my mind, a chilling testament to their greed. I heard the squeak of the door opening, then a nurse's voice. "Mrs. Peterson, how are you feeling?" I forced a shallow groan, slowly opening my eyes, feigning confusion. The nurse fussed over me, checking my vitals, while Leora and Julian stood by, their faces masks of concern. "Oh, Mom, you're awake." Leora rushed to my side, her hand gripping mine, her voice full of fox relief. "We were so worried. The doctor said," I cut her off with a weak cough, my voice raspy. What happened?" Julian stepped forward. "There was an accident, Martha. Your brakes, they failed." He looked down at me, his eyes filled with what I now knew was feigned sympathy. "But you're going to be okay. That's all that matters." I allowed myself a small, shaky smile. "Yes," I whispered, my gaze shifting from Leora to Julian and back again. "All that matters." They continued to hover, chattering nervously, offering platitudes and empty reassurances. I let them talk, absorbing their every word, every gesture. The mask of concern on Leora's face was beginning to crack, replaced by an almost imperceptible flicker of impatience. I knew she was eager for me to recover so she could finally access her prize. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous routine. Doctors, nurses, tests, medication, and always Leora and Julian, their presence a constant, suffocating reminder of their betrayal. They continued their charade, showering me with attention, making plans for my future, plans that revolved around their own desires. I played along, offering weak smiles and vague responses, all the while plotting my next move. One afternoon, while Leora was out running errands, I asked to see my lawyer. He arrived looking concerned, his briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. I explained my wishes, outlining the changes I wanted made to my will. He listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Are you sure about this, Martha?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice firm. "I know exactly what I'm doing." When Leora returned, she found me sitting up in bed, a surprisingly strong grip on my lawyer's hand. He smiled at her, a professional, yet knowing smile. "Mrs. Peterson has just finalized some important changes to her will," he announced. Leora's eyes widened, her smile faltering. "Changes," she stammered. What kind of changes?" My lawyer turned to me, a subtle question in his eyes. I nodded, my lips curving into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I've decided," I said, my voice clear and steady, "to leave everything to Julian. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, sharp and insistent. I could hear the rhythmic beeping of machines, a constant reminder of where I was. My eyelids felt heavy, but I forced myself to keep them closed, to maintain the illusion. Leora's perfume, sickly sweet and cloying, filled the air moments before her voice cut through the quiet. She's still out. No sign of progress. A pause. Then, in a lower, conspiratorial tone, "Julian, darling, you wouldn't believe it. The doctor says it's a miracle she's even alive. Brakes completely severed. Such a freak accident." Her voice dripped with false concern. "A performance just for me? I know." Another pause, filled only with the rustle of what I assumed was her handbag. "Yes. Well, about that, have you spoken to the lawyer yet? I mean, surely this changes things." Her pacing quickened, the soft thud of her heels against the linoleum floor a counterpoint to the beeping monitors. I know it's morbid. But Doc, well, the arrangements are all in place. The house, the stocks, everything is ready to transfer. It's just a matter of time." She sighed, a theatrical sound of exasperation. "I just wish it would happen already. This waiting is agonizing." I focused on controlling my breathing, keeping it shallow and even, fighting the urge to open my eyes and confront her. "I understand, darling," she continued, her voice taking on a softer, more pleading tone. "But we have to be patient. Think of the future, our future. The trip to Bali, the new yacht, it's all within reach now. The yacht, of course." I had almost forgotten about that little detail. Another extravagance whispered in hushed tones during their late-night planning sessions I pretended not to overhear. "Yes, I'll keep you updated. Love you." The click of the phone ending the call echoed in the sterile room. I heard her exhale sharply, a sound of relief, before the rustle of her bag began again. A moment later, she was speaking to me, her voice dripping with fox tenderness. "Oh, Mother," she crooned, her hand lightly touching my arm. "You're such a fighter. I just know you're going to pull through this." The blatant insincerity was almost comical. She sat beside the bed, picking up a magazine and flipping through it restlessly. I could feel her gaze on me, assessing, calculating. "The doctor said you might be able to hear me," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "So I'm just going to sit here and keep you company." She cleared her throat. "I've been thinking about the future. When you get better, we should really discuss your finances. You know, just to make sure everything is in order." The audacity was breathtaking. I fought to maintain my composure, my silent act of defiance. Leora continued to chatter, filling the room with empty words of concern, interspersed with veiled hints about the inheritance. She talked about redecorating the house, about selling my antique furniture pieces I had cherished for decades to modernize the place. She even suggested moving me into a smaller, more manageable apartment, closer to the city, so she and Julian could have the house to themselves. It would be so much easier for everyone, she insisted, her voice bright and cheerful. "And you wouldn't have to worry about a thing. We'd take such good care of you." Care. The word felt like a cruel joke. I listened, absorbing every word, every lie, every carefully crafted manipulation. The evidence was piling up, a mountain of greed and deceit. After what felt like an eternity, she stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "Well, I should be going. Julian's waiting for me. We're having dinner with some business associates. She hesitated, then leaned down and kissed my forehead, her lips cold against my skin. Get well soon, mother, she whispered, her voice laced with a chilling undercurrent of anticipation. We all miss you so much. As the sound of her heels faded down the hallway, I finally allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The bait had been taken. The trap was set. Leora had revealed her true colors, and now I had all the ammunition I needed. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. I knew exactly what I was going to do. The legal documents were already drafted, signed, and safely locked away. My will, meticulously updated just days before the accident, outlined my wishes explicitly. Everything, every last penny, would go to the local animal shelter, a cause I had quietly supported for years. Leora and Julian would get nothing, absolutely nothing. I would continue to play the part, the unconscious, oblivious mother, for just a little while longer. I would let them stew in their anticipation, their greed gnawing at them with each passing day. And then, when the time was right, I would open my eyes, and the look on Lara's face when she finally learned the truth that, I realized, would be my true inheritance.